Okay, so I'm sure some of you have at least done this once, but you look at a show or an anime and are just kind of like, based on initial impressions, not even watching an episode, just seeing images, maybe a brief description, you look at it and you're kind of like, you know what? This isn't for me. I think I'll pass on this one. It's unfortunate when people do that because they often lose the chance to, see something that they may actually really enjoy. It's kind of what happened with me when Golden Time first came out. I saw it and I was like, you know what, I'm not really going to watch that. Then I got the chance to watch the first 2 episodes with some other people, and from that point on, I ended up watching the show from when it started all the way to its conclusion during the 2 seasons that it ran. And so, ladies and gentlemen, here we are today with my review of Golden Time. Okay. I'm not gonna put you through the rest of that, don't worry. If there's one thing I can say off the bat, this show's openings, specifically the first one, are absolutely awful. Not exactly the best way to start an anime, huh? So looking past that abomination, let's actually look at what makes Golden Time, well, Golden Time. Golden Time is a romantic comedy, and I know what you're thinking. I've already seen enough of those. Why should I make an effort for this one? Well, shut the fuck up and let me explain. The story takes place in the shoes of Tadabanri, who has recently been accepted into university and immediately befriends another university goer named Yana-san. Things are great and glorious until, well, this bitch decides to show up. Here we meet Kaga Koko, who is originally obsessed with Yana, but eventually becomes friends with Tadabanri, and eventually they become a romantic object. I won't lie here, Kaga is kind of nuts and a little bit obsessive, and that makes her very unlikable, but while she is unlikable, this kind of does contribute, again, to the characters and the stuff that happens in the series, so I find it somewhat forgivable. In terms of story, this does not necessarily sound like something that's super original, and, well, quite frankly, it's a romantic comedy that's kind of expected, but on top of that, you have other interesting things that keep this going. For example, Tadabanri is also a victim of an accident that gave him a bad case of amnesia. He cannot seem to remember a lot of things that happened in the past. This helps with his character development as well as his relationship with Kaga being tested and other things in life becoming complicated as he tries to figure out where he stands as opposed to where he used to be. Alongside that, this is a romantic comedy that takes place at a university. That's right, we're in college now. Can you actually believe it? This was an anime from 2013 that didn't take place in high school. And alongside that, one of the biggest things this show does that I don't see a lot in slice of life or romantic comedy in general is that the characters who are the love interest actually move at what might be a believable pace. Their relationship is very realistic to me, because they progress at what might seem a normal rate between people instead of waiting 2 seasons to start holding hands or actually say something to one another, which is more than I can say for a lot of shows I've seen. It doesn't feel super awkward between the 2 of them, and that makes things really interesting. Another thing that makes the show interesting is the shenanigans that these characters get involved with. There is plenty of hilarious moments in the show on top of the somewhat serious nature between some of the moments that happen, and it balances itself out very nicely so that you have a good viewing experience. The characters each bring something interesting to the table, so they definitely are a big part of the show, and if there's one thing I love about shows, it's characters that are totally likable, and a lot of the characters in Golden Time are totally likable. However, as nice as this show is, I can't help but point out the fact that in terms of plot and progression, the show starts out really strong, but gets to a certain point towards the middle, around maybe a little over halfway, where the show feels like it doesn't really go anywhere. Like, it felt like there was steady progression going between characters and such, but it gets to the point where it kind of staggers. And in regards to the end, while I didn't hate it, I can't help but make points about it that I do like how it ended in regards to the events that occurred in the show leading up to it, but there are some points at the end where it feels kind of rushed, and on top of that, a lot of things are kind of incohesive in terms of explanation. But all in all, it's not necessarily an awful ending. This being a romantic comedy and slice of life, I can't really say that there's any music in this show that really stands out to me. especially not the opening. And as far as animation goes, it looks nice for what it does. It doesn't necessarily have to be something fancy if you want this kind of show, and it looks clean enough, so I can't really complain. All in all, Golden Time is a fun watch, for sure. It has a lot of things going for it that I don't see a lot in a lot of romantic comedies that may actually be worth your time if you're a fan of the genre, or if you want something that's in the genre that isn't necessarily like everything else. It has great characters, some great comedy, and some generally interesting moments that are actually serious. So despite its minor flaws, I will have to give this show an 8 out of 10. And despite the flaws that give it an 8 out of 10 as opposed to something higher, it definitely is worth your time watching if you're into this kind of thing, or even if you're not into this kind of thing. It's got its interesting moments. And it's definitely taught me one thing: don't overlook a show just based on its first impressions.